And Arundel County Council is now in session. Please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Hare will introduce the individual that will be giving the invocation.
Good evening. In honor of the anniversary of the passing of Frederick Douglass tomorrow, I thought it would be apropos to bring in someone representative in that capacity. So we have here tonight Reverend Dean Nelson, who is also the chairman of the board of the Frederick Douglass Foundation.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you to the council for the opportunity to lead in prayer. As was stated, Frederick Douglass was born on February the 14th and passed away on February the 20th. So we affirm this week as Frederick Douglass Week. So why don't we bow? Father in heaven, we thank you so very much for the opportunity to come before you this evening. Lord, we humble our hearts and ask for these next few moments that we would acknowledge you. Sometimes we find ourselves too busy and too proud to acknowledge the one who has given us everything that we need and deserve in this life. God, I pray that you would bless this council, that you would give them wisdom tonight to make the decisions that need to be made for this county. We pray that you would give them courage to stand on their convictions, and most of all, that you would give them a heart to serve this great community. We thank you and we honor you for this time and for their leadership. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Amen. We have two Boy Scout organizations here this evening, Boy Scout Troop 995 from Arundel and PAC 111 from Crofton. They're going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. You all come forward behind the wall there, and we'll have you guys start.
Oh, I guess it's just us.
Yep, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And I also like to recognize, I believe we have the League of Women Voters here representing. If anyone here from that group this evening? Okay, welcome. Thank you all for coming. Madam Secretary, can you please read the ethics statement?
The Ethics Commission has asked that I advise you that under certain circumstances, members of the public may qualify as lobbyists when they testify before the County Council. If so, the law requires that certain information be filed with the Ethics Commission. The Chairman of the Ethics Commission has asked that those present review the Ethics Commission information in the foyer of these chambers. If there are any questions about lobbying requirements, speakers should contact the Ethics Commission in the Heritage Office Complex on Riva Road.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Now we have an invitation to audience. We'll now invite members of the audience who signed up before the meeting to address the council briefly on any subject not included in the printed agenda. Remarks will be limited to 2 minutes. I will call you forward and you can come to the table here and take a seat. The following names: Barbara Cupp, Kim Forey, Roger Kaufman, Virginia, it's either Kitzmiller or Ritzmiller, Jan Skopel, and Stan Pruzlaki. And if we can start with Ms. Cupp and work our way down, name and address, and then you have 2 minutes.
Barbara Cupp, 819 Ritchie Highway, Severna Park. I'm with Rebuilding Together in Arundel County. We've been in the county since 1991 and have renovated over 700 homes in every district. We have put nearly $13 million into this county, and this year we're scheduled to do about $2 million. We started a new program called Neighborhood Revitalization, where we're able to go into whole neighborhoods, renovate the common areas, and help the neighborhood change the trajectory that it's on. This program has been able to allow us to expand our programs quite exponentially, hence the $2 million versus some of the other years we've done previously. However, we've reached a point in our growth and expansion, having our program is free to our clients, it's free to our neighborhoods, and and up too far has been free to the county. But we have reached a point in our growth and expansion where we are asking for advocacy, networking, help, support, some kind of recognition. We are the nation's largest nonprofit that does what we do, and we just cannot survive in anonymity any longer. So I speak to you today. I've been invited back to your meeting on March 12th for further follow-up questions and answers, and I'm meeting with the Maryland delegates for Anne Arundel County on March 22nd. So I look forward to you reviewing the material and seeing what we've accomplished in this county, and we definitely want to continue our work. Thank you.
Thank you for that update. Kim Forey.
Good evening, Chairman and council members. My name is Kim Forey, and I am a resident of the Dogwood Senior Mobile Home Park. We are a neighborhood community of veterans, widows of veterans. We are 25 units and 30 people. We have manufactured homes and as well as mobile units, and we are facing developers that would like to to remove the homes and displace the residents. The park is historic, having its start after World War II. The senior designation came about to meet a need for affordable housing in Anne Arundel County. We are on 8+1 acres with yards and green space. With development breathing down our neck, we also face extinction much like the animals that are in the park. There are raccoons and deer and eagles next to us that we see flying around frequently. Senior use of our neighborhood road system and Route 2 is minimal because we have 7 full-time residents that do work. The rest are 23 residents that are retired. We have 1 person within our neighborhood that uses public transportation frequently. So with all that being said, we would like to make our case that we would like to see affordable housing in Anne Arundel County stay affordable, which our neighborhood is.
Thank you so much. Roger Kaufman.
Yes, my name's Roger Kaufman. I also live in the Dogwood Senior Mobile Home Park, and I'm one of the veterans. But my situation is I want to bring everybody's attention to us, if we have to, getting out of there. See, there's no real place that we can go, especially as a unit. That's done. This is my 3rd move with the same house because of people buying up and away we go. If we put in for the Anne Arundel County housing situation, which I have, I've been on there 8 months. I started out at 586 and now I'm at 588. So I checked into it. And what is happening is when we fill out the application, that's what gets picked. And they go by that. And there's 5 things or so on there. One is if you're homeless, you get a certain number. If you're spousal abuse, you get a certain number. If you're being evicted and it's not your fault, there's another number. But the problem is, and I put all that stuff down there, but I can't get approval or even looked at until I can prove it. I don't have any dates, don't have any permission to do anything from anybody. And that's what's going to happen to all of us. I'm going to have to sell my house and move somewhere if I can. But I can't go into housing because I can't tell them I have great home, a nice place to live, and that's it. I'm done. And so's the other 24. So we need your help. Can we move something on this list to help us out?
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. Mr. Ritzmiller?
Oh, that's me.
Yeah.
Statements.
Hi, my name is Virginia Kitzmiller. I'm a homeowner living at Dogwood Senior Mobile Home Park in Arnold, Maryland, a community of senior-only residents on Ritchie Highway. I work part-time as a church secretary for the local Episcopal Church. Dogwood Senior Mobile Home Park is a 22 mobile home unit for seniors 55 years of age or older, and almost every resident qualifies as low income. Some are veterans living on their service pensions. Most are retired, though some are still working, all with earnings that meet the low-income guidelines. No one under the age of 55 may apply to live in the park, and many who live there now are well into their 70s and 80s. Every resident lives in an independent, comfortable, multi-room home that they own and care for. Most of my neighbors have undertaken significant investments in home improvement over the years. These are 1 or 2 bedroom homes with modern kitchens, several bathrooms, and comfortable living spaces with well-kept yards and gardens. They are solid, well-built, sturdy structures and comfortable and safe homes, which these residents have created to enable them to age in place. That is, we have established physical environments and lifestyle patterns that enable us to take care of ourselves, managing the daily activities of living necessary for independent life as self-responsible citizens. The developer may believe that all that they need to do is arrange to find new space for these homes so that they can be moved to another mobile home park. But in many cases, this will not be possible. Many of these homes have been improved upon structures that were produced decades ago. And because mobile home is considered a vehicle, their age is based upon the initial construction date. This means the normative requirement now for mobile home communities is to not allow units after a certain age. So though the places are very comfortable and livable, they cannot be moved.
Ms. Riller, if you want to summarize, or is that it?
Basically, that means that all the time, effort, and equity that these people have put into their homes, many of them will lose it. They will not be able to sell it because it has no value once that property is no longer a mobile home unit.
Thank you. Jan Scopel?
Hi, my name is Jan Scopel. I'm also a resident of Dogwood Senior Park. I work full-time. I restore old homes. I build energy-efficient homes. A mobile home, what we call now after 1976, is a manufactured home. If I were to stick-build a house that is the size of a manufactured home, the energy efficiency of a manufactured home, I would be charging $200-some a square foot. Manufactured homes come in at $50 a square foot. It's the only real affordable solution I believe this country has. And we could be the national... When you think of a trailer park, just envision that, right? The stigma attached to that, okay. After World War II, tract homes became the standard. They built the same home after home for an entire neighborhood. Those homes took on a new feeling when people dedicated themselves to investing in how they developed those homes and made them real homes. The National Trust for Historic Preservation in April of 2018 wrote a paper that claims that this country is rapidly losing not just one of the only true forms of unsubsidized affordable housing, but a huge chunk of how our country developed since the advent of mobile homes and trailer parks. We are now affordable manufactured homes, and it's worth preserving this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scopel. Mr. Pruzlaki?
Thank you. My name is Stan Pruzlaki, 71 years old, Vietnam area vet. I, too, live in Dogwood Mobile Home Park. Good evening, Anne Arundel County mentors. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you tonight. Some of the existing tenants own modular homes that have been completely paid for but are too old to transport and not meet roadworthy requirements. These will just be bulldozed over. For them to relocate, they will lose their friendships, their support for transportation, all their doctors, shopping, church events, and worship. Anne Arundel affording housing is not an option, as they have stopped taking applications and have a 2 to 3 year waiting list. If these seniors, this traumatic event, something that they have not had or concerned themselves with for decades, the words that I have for their plight: traumatic, depressing, catastrophic, demoralizing, and downright unconscionable. My plight tonight is explaining the cost involved in the newer units and the double wides. These units are still roadworthy and worth the expense to have them relocated, but the expense is considerable. I purchased my home from a Pennsylvania manufacturer and had to pay building permits, drawings made up for a new unit, new concrete, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The cost of that to me was $21,000 to have it set and permits so that I could move into it. If I have to move, that investment goes up in smoke. It's just money I wasted. And the other side of that is to move it someplace. The quote that I've got within a 50-mile radius, which aren't any vacancies for double wides, is $23,000 to $25,000. And that does not include the cost.
Yeah, if you can just summarize, Mr. Vlacki.
Well, I'm still on top of that. I have to pay moving and storage. Have stuff packed up, put into storage. I got to go live someplace for 2 or 3 months. Those are additional costs. This is all financial. I don't have that kind of money to pay for this stuff all over again. I did it one time.
Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Volke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one question for you, sir. Are you all subject to a ground rent? Is that what it is? Obviously, we're a new council, so we haven't heard all these issues before, and I know this has come before us, but is that the issue, that you're paying ground rent, and so you're
That's correct.
Okay. And so even though you're paying ground rent, you had to pay for all the improvements that you did in terms of the pad and the site and the permit costs?
Yeah, you just get the land, and you got to pay to get it installed and habitable.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. This panel is dismissed. We have 2 more folks who signed up for invitation audience, if they would come forward. Jim Batchelder and Charles Manto. Mr. Batchelder, whenever you're ready, name and address in 2 minutes.
My name is Jim Batchelder, and I live in the Dogwood Senior Community. We have a unique place in the environment there, and one of the things that we are discussing is to perhaps set up a study of the environmental impact of the development. There have been many developments around us affecting the Broadneck Peninsula, the Magothy River, and the Severn. The uniqueness of our location and the environmental balance as it is now should be maintained rather than taken away. This is part of the quality of life issue that we have. Working on the balance of the water cycle, we have the old growth trees in our forest and adjacent to our property, which control a lot of the water cycle within the stream's runoff that feeds Magothy. There's the obvious ones of infrastructure, and we've gotten no good answers on whether the infrastructure, if any of you all have driven Route 2 lately, you understand what I mean, and that does not include the obvious utilities. But it's become a dangerous situation there, which I moved here in the 60s, and it was a little looser on that and a little more livable, but we have created a density problem that's greater than the carrying capacity of the Broadneck Peninsula. So I look at the larger picture as living in one community, but I look at my neighbors and we have problems to address. And as far as being a senior
If you can
community,
summarize, Ms. Batchelder, thank you.
as far as being a senior community, we are part of the solution to the affordable housing, statewide, nationwide. And rather than break down this community that exists and become part of the problem, we seek to restore and keep the balance we have.
Thank you. Mr. Manto?
Hello, I've submitted to you a little background sheet. It's actually a business card. My name is Charles Manto. I also live at 1277 Ritchie Highway in Lot 185 in Arnold, Maryland. I'm also one of the Vietnam-era veterans. I still work. In fact, as you can see from the material I sent you, I advise the Department of Defense on resilient critical infrastructure and the Department of Homeland Security on resilient hospitals. But tonight I'd like to express my concern about resilient communities like Dogwood Senior Mobile Home Park, where I placed a home just a year ago. I propose that we don't change the use of that land at 1277 Ritchie Highway, but retain it as a low-density, affordable senior mobile and manufactured home community. And in that proposal, would like to add a couple of other subsets, which include, we'd like to get together with all of you in a work session and look at all of these options that we have, including the options to find funding so that we could acquire the land from the current owners and retain that use for affordable housing. In fact, even improve it so that it could be a model of what we could do across the county and other locations such as that. We'd like to include in these work sessions participants from other stakeholder organizations, whether it's the new Anne Arundel Community Together organization or the Arnold Preservation Council, affordable housing groups, and the community development organizations that you work with on a regular basis. We'd like to make certain that as we do this, we don't unintentionally dislocate these at-risk homeowners that will place their health and their financial security at risk, further strain a sensitive headwater environment, and further erode the resilience of the community that houses the state's capital and its ability to maintain their continuity of government.
Thank you, Mr. Manto. You are all dismissed. Is there anyone else that'd like to come forward for?
Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, Ms. Fiedler, can you hold 1 second? Mr. Batchelder.
I just want to address all the residents of Dogwood who are here today. You are in my district. I knocked on many doors in your community. This is on my radar, but I wanted to take an opportunity to thank the veterans who are with us today for their service. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to come forward for the invitation to audience? Okay, the invitation audience is now closed. Is there any item that any council member would like to place on the agenda? The administration has requested that resolution number 919 be added to the agenda for introduction this evening. Madam Secretary, could you please read the title of resolution 919 to be introduced this evening?
Resolution number 919, resolution approving the recommendation of Billy Penley continuing to serve as acting health officer.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. May I have a motion that the partial reading of any bill, resolution, amendment to a bill or resolution or minutes constitutes the reading of the whole?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Madam Secretary, if you could please read the minutes of February 4th, 2019.
The meeting was called to order by Chairman Pruski at 7 p.m. and opened with the invocation given by Ms. Rodvian, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of February 4th, 2019? Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion passes. The minutes of February 4th, 2019 stand approved as read. Madam Secretary, please read the titles of the bills to be introduced this evening.
Bill number 819, an ordinance concerning subdivision and development, adequate public facilities. Bill number 919, an ordinance concerning subdivision and development, critical area overlay, lot consolidation and reconfiguration. Bill number 1019, an ordinance concerning Millburr Special Community Benefit District.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, could you please read the title of the resolutions to be introduced this evening?
Resolution number 619, resolution approving the continued service of Jessica Lays as acting budget officer. Resolution number 719, resolution approving the continued service of William Martin as acting superintendent of detention facilities. Resolution number 819, resolution concerning a determination by the county council to engage the services of Clifton Larson Allen LLP, an independent firm of certified public accountants, to perform the financial audit for fiscal year 2019.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. May I have a motion to suspend the rules to vote on resolutions numbers 619 and 719? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Okay. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
I'm going to read 619 in for
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, my apologies. On the motion, Ms. Hare.
Aye.
Ms. Lacy.
Aye.
Ms. Pickard.
Aye.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
Mr. Pruski.
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. The motion to suspend the rules to vote on resolution numbers 619 and 719 is passed.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Now we can please read the title, Resolution 619.
Now I will. Resolution number 619, resolution approving the continued service of Jessica Lays as acting budget officer.
Okay, the administration, Mr. Barron, or... Good evening, gentlemen. You have the floor.
As you all know, longtime budget officer John Hammond retired December 31st. Resolution 619 approves Jessica Lays to serve as acting budget officer through July 2nd, 2019. Ms. Lays has been before you before. She previously served as assistant budget officer since 2011. You should have her resume in your packet.
Any questions from the council? Councilman Volkey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Barron, good evening. So I guess my question is this. I don't necessarily have a problem with either of these individuals. I think they're both highly qualified. My question is more, I guess, procedural, and maybe Mr. Swain's the one to answer this, but to the extent that we're continuing these individuals in an acting capacity, what is the intention of the administration to fill these positions on a more permanent basis? And to Mr. Swain, to what extent are we allowed under the charter to continue in an acting capacity? Because I had thought that you could only be acting for up to 60 days.
Greg Swain, County Attorney. The initial acting appointment is for 60 days, but it can be extended by an additional 4 months by resolution. That's what both of these resolutions are seeking to do.
We are, to answer your first question, we are actively looking to fill these positions and are moving with all deliberate speed, but want to make sure we get them right.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any further discussion in the council? Very good. Madam Secretary, can you please call the roll on the resolution 619?
Ms. Hare?
Aye.
Ms. Lacy? Aye. Ms. Pickard?
Aye.
Mr. Volkey?
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler?
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian?
Aye.
Mr. Pruski?
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Resolution number 619 is adopted.
Congratulations, Ms. Lays. Madam Secretary, please read the title of resolution 719.
Resolution number 719, resolution approving the continued service of William Martin as acting superintendent of detention facilities.
Mr. Barron?
As you know, Mr. Kokolas retired as superintendent on December 31st, 2018. Resolution 719 approves Mr. Martin to serve as acting superintendent through July 2nd, 2019. Mr. Martin has previously served as warden of the Ordnance Road Correction Center since 2000. You have seen him here before and you should have his resume in front of you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hare? Nope. Okay. Any other questions, comments? All right.
I just have a comment, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I just want to say, publicly, Mr. Martin is, I think, doing a fantastic job. And he and I went toe-to-toe on that 287G issue, but he did a heck of a job on that. So I want to say that publicly.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
I'd like to second that.
Thank you. All right, seeing no other discussion, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on Resolution 719.
Ms. Hare?
Aye.
Ms. Lacy?
Aye.
Ms. Pickard?
Aye.
Mr. Volkey?
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler?
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian?
Aye.
Mr. Pruski?
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Resolution number 719 is adopted.
Congratulations, Mr. Martin. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 10118 as amended.
Bill number 10118, an ordinance concerning subdivision and development setbacks from certain roads.
Okay, Councilwoman Hare, did you want to add anything for this bill? Or?
No, we've talked about this quite a bit at this point.
Okay.
I would just like to say that, I am hoping that this will pass because it is a good improvement for the quality of life for the residents in that area.
Great, thank you. Administration, any further comments?
Nothing further from what we've already discussed. We have no opposition.
Okay, great. We will now open this up for public hearing. Remarks will be limited to 2 minutes. I do have one person signed up, Mr. Robert Smith. If you come forward, please. As you're coming up, name and address in 2 minutes.
Yep. Sure. Yes, my name's Robert Smith. I live at 1487 Chatham Court in Crofton, Maryland. Just here representing the board of Crofton First. Just simply say again, thank you to Councilman Pruski and Councilwoman Hare for introducing this bill, and just basically say that our organization is still in support of this bill. So, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Is there anyone else that did not sign up that wishes to speak on this bill? Okay. The public hearing on Bill number 10118 as amended is now closed. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill 10118 as amended.
Bill number 10118, an ordinance concerning subdivision development setbacks from certain roads.
Great. Any further discussion from the council? Councilwoman Lacy?
Oh, no, I was just ready to vote.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. That's okay. I'm with you on that. Madam Secretary, please call the roll. Bill number 10118 as amended.
Ms. Hare?
Aye.
Ms. Lacy?
Nay.
Ms. Pickard?
No.
Mr. Volkey?
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler?
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian?
Aye.
Mr. Pruski?
Aye.
5 in the affirmative, 2 in the negative. Bill number 10118 as amended is passed.
Great. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 319, excuse me.
Bill number 319, an ordinance concerning current expense budget, transfer of funds, and supplementary appropriations.
Okay. Mr. Barron?
I've been reminded to state my name for the record, Pete Barron, Office of the County Executive. Bill 319 provides for the transfer of appropriation authority between county departments within the general fund and other funds. Section 1 of this bill transfers $468,300 from the CAO contingency account to the Office of Personnel for overtime audits and recruitment initiatives. Section 2 recognizes $185,400 of revenue received from grants not anticipated in the budget. These grants are for the Departments of Aging, Detention, and Health. The administration will be offering an amendment at the appropriate time.
Okay. Any immediate questions from the council? Okay, we'll now open up the public hearing. Remarks will be limited to 2 minutes. Is there anyone here to testify on Bill number 319? Okay, seeing no one, no movement in the audience. The public hearing is now closed on Bill 319. Madam Secretary, please read the title of the bill.
Bill number 319, an ordinance concerning current expense budget, transfer of funds, and supplementary appropriations.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, we do have an amendment. Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 1.
This amendment increases the appropriation in the Grants Special Revenue Fund by recognizing additional grants in the Department of Aging and Disabilities and the Health Department, and corrects the amount of a grant in the Department of Aging.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt this amendment?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion from the council? All right, Madam
Yes,
Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 1.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry. My
I'm
apologies.
sorry.
Councilwoman Hare?
That's okay. And maybe I'm missing something, but the grant money is what's increasing in this amendment? Because if I just look at 25, you're just modifying, you're just taking it and adding, you're putting in the 873 instead of the 185?
I'll let Mr. Thoreau answer, but I believe that's correct.
Okay.
Stephen Theroux, Budget Office, yes, that's correct. We're just recognizing a new grant in the Department of Health, so we're just taking the amount that's going to the Grant Special Revenue Fund and increasing it by that grant amount.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman
Thank you, Mr.
Vokey.
Chair. Thank you. Man, that's the second
I know.
in a row. Yeah. What is this? Because obviously we had gone through the work session, we talked this all through. Madam Auditor did her blue letter. Now all of a sudden we're increasing this, recognition of grant funding, which obviously is an external source of funding, so it's not necessarily from the county budget, but I mean it's going up $700,000 almost. So what is that?
Again, Stephen Theroux from the Budget Office. This is recognizing a new state opioid response grant that's going to the Health Department. We can send, since this amendment was just introduced, we can send that detail over to Madam Auditor to share with you. But again, this has no county match funds as well. It's all just new state money coming in.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Lacey?
Will you also be updating the fiscal note?
I mean, we'd be happy to, I think.
I think the answer is
Yeah.
yes, we will. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions?
I have one, Mr. Chair.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't want to interrupt.
No,
somebody
no,
else
go
that's
ahead.
gone. Okay. With respect to updating the fiscal note, if we're going to vote on this tonight, if we're amending it, we're not going to vote on the bill tonight. Is that
That's
point of
correct.
order?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Councilwoman Lacey?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Let me get this. Any other questions? Okay. Madam Secretary, if you could please call the roll on amendment number 1.
Ms. Hare?
Aye.
Ms. Lacy?
Aye.
Ms. Pickard?
Aye.
Mr. Volkey?
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler?
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian?
Aye.
Mr. Pruski?
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Amendment number 1 is adopted.
Okay, bill number 319 as amended will be heard at the next meeting, March 4th, 2019. Okay, bill number 419. Madam Secretary, please read the title of bill 419.
Bill number 419, an ordinance concerning current expense budget, Board of Education, transfer of funds, and supplementary appropriations.
Okay, Mr. Barrett and the crew.
Peter Barron, Office of the County Executive. Bill 419 transfers $668,800 from the CAO contingency account to the Board of Education in the general fund and appropriates $9,757,600 of additional funds to the Board of Education in the local education fund categories, expenditure categories, excuse me. And it's in your blue letter, about $4 million in unappropriated fund balance is assigned to school security. So the school and Mr. Shagnovich or Mr. Stansky can speak to exactly what they plan to spend the money on, but it's some important security upgrades that were planned. And then an increase in grants revenue, and then $668,000 from the CAO for underground fiber. I think we're happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the council? Okay, seeing no questions. Mr. Volkey.
Thank you. I just wanted to give somebody else a chance first. I'm sorry. So I was reading the blue letter, and I'm not sure who's the appropriate person to answer this, but what I noted in here is that it states, page 4, that the Board of Education projects a year-end health insurance fund balance totaling $22 million. Can someone tell me what that is? Is that sort of a pot of money that's there of $22 million, or what's going on with that? I just didn't understand it, and I was hoping I could get an answer.
Sure. Ella Cheknovich, Chief Operating Officer. Our annual spend on healthcare is just rough order of magnitude numbers, about $180 million worth of expenses. We try to keep somewhere around 1 to 2 months worth of fund balance available to pay claims. You can have a single incident easily that exceeds $1 million+. So there's a lot of variability in terms of the actual claims expenses on a per person. We also cannot predict utilization, so not just the frequency of how often somebody does access health care, but also the cost of each individual one. We can't control. So in general, it's a good practice to keep a certain percentage of fund balance. Essentially acts like a shock absorber. It's a little bit maybe like a revenue stabilization fund too. So we don't have to rapidly change the rates that the employees pay. So we try to set that on a one-year basis, keep that stable through that entire plan year. Our healthcare plan year runs from a January to December, and then we use that fund balance as that shock absorber in between to either absorb those outsized claims, or if costs, be they pharmaceutical or laboratory, medical hospital, if they exceed our projections during that year, it allows us to absorb that before the next rate setting exercise.
Okay, any other questions from the council? Okay, we'll now open the public hearing on 419. Anyone in the audience like to come forward? Seeing no movement, we will close the public hearing on 419. Any further discussion by the council? Okay, Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill 419.
Bill number 419, an ordinance concerning current expense budget, Board of Education, transfer of funds, and supplementary appropriations.
Madam Secretary, just before the vote, I just want to make sure I declare my spouse an employee of the school system to clarify that in terms of ethics. Any further discussion?
I suppose I should also declare that I am myself an employee of the school system.
Okay. Thank you. Now that there's no discussion, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on Bill number 419.
Ms. Hare?
Aye.
Ms. Lacy?
Aye.
Ms. Pickard?
Aye.
Mr. Volkey?
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler?
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian?
Aye.
Mr. Pruski?
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Bill number 419 is passed.
Thank you all. Bill number 519. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Bill number 519.
Bill number 519, an ordinance concerning licensing food service facilities, polystyrene food service products.
Okay. Mr. Trumbauer, good to see you.
Pleasure to be here, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. You got the floor if you want to discuss this.
Council bill.
Sorry. Actually, Ms. Rodvian, did you want to start off?
Yeah, I'm just really thrilled to be introducing this bill that will reduce the litter, reduce the pollution in the Chesapeake Bay, and take out of our landfills a material that really has no biodegradable traits. And as all of us live on the Chesapeake Bay and its tributaries, I think this is a really important step forward to remove this substance from our food and restaurant practices.
Great, thank you. Anyone else like to comment? Co-sponsors, okay. Administration, Mr. Trumbauer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris Trumbauer for County Executive's Office. I'm joined at the table by Don Curdian from Health Department and Rhodey Holthaus from DPW, Kelly Kenny from Office of Law. Administration supports the bill. We would like to get polystyrene foam out of our waste stream, as we discussed at the work session. It does make up a portion of the litter that you will see in our streams and waterways, on the roadsides, and through various places of the county. As you'll see in the blue letter, we believe that we can undertake the outreach programs within house, so no additional funds, and the health department is already visiting all the restaurants in the county as part of their routine inspections, so this is just one more thing for them to look at during their visit. So if there's any particular technical questions, we have Don and Rhodey here to address those.
Okay, any immediate questions for the council, from the council? Okay, we'll now open up the public hearing. I'm sorry, Ms. Fiedler.
Yes. So during our work session, I had mentioned the densifier, and it was commented that the cost of that densifier, since we are not going that route, would be used to defer some of the cost of implementing this, correct? Did I understand that correctly?
Good evening. This is Mr. Chairman, members of the County Council, Rhodey Holthaus from Public Works. What I mentioned at the work session was we solicited for a vendor to help us recycle EPS foam. And admittedly, this would only be a sliver of that material. This is just food service that the bill's talking about. But we look for a partner first before we figure out the system that we put in place to service that partner. We found one company that was willing to help us. They did not use a densifier, so we did not buy a densifier. But I mentioned in the work session, when we got to the point of a contract, they would not execute the contract with us because of the EPS phone bill that the city of Annapolis passed. And their rationale was the city of Annapolis is within the jurisdiction of Anne Arundel County, so we couldn't work together.
And Councilwoman, I think what you're asking is what will we do with the money we would have spent on the densifier?
Correct.
We are exploring options to help mitigate the school system's cost, and that was $50,000 that the previous administration had put in this year's budget. That has not been spent, so we're exploring ways to use that, potentially additional funds to help the school system implement this change in materials.
Okay, I just wanted to acknowledge that the money set aside for the densifier is a one-time cost, where
Correct.
This is a reoccurring expense. So I'm just trying to understand where exactly, at most, we're talking about $676,000 annually, potentially, where that's coming from.
So I can answer to the extent that the administration can, and first of all, I'll also put on the table, we've reached out to colleagues in the Montgomery County Council about how their Board of Ed uses non-polystyrene foam materials. They've indicated that they get a cost of about 5.5 cents, which is less than I think what the material our school system would like to use costs, and they've indicated they're willing to have Anne Arundel join on that contract as a rider, and we're exploring that as well. So it may be a less net cost than what we were originally presented with, number one. And number two, the school lunch system is operated essentially like an enterprise fund. So they, there's the money that they charge lunches is what pays. My understanding is the school has not raised their lunch price for several years. They're probably in the neighborhood of exploring a price raise anyway, so this could be tacked on along with that when and if it comes to that. But we're coming into this existing year, we are interested in helping the school system offset that cost, but I don't think that the county administration is looking to carry that on indefinitely.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Councilman Vokey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Trumbauer, question for you about the administration. So during the work session, the school system was represented by Mr. Steknovich, who's still here, and he indicated that the cost currently being paid for the material that we're using is about 3 cents a tray. He also indicated that the option that the school system is looking at as a replacement is about 8 cents a tray, and we use approximately 9.6 to 9.7 million trays a year. So my math is that that's about $480,000 in cost there. Now, I guess what my question would be is, the county executive, when he campaigned, indicated that he had no intention of raising taxes. I just went back and watched the Capitol Gazette debate in October at Maryland Hall, where he and the then county executive were having this discussion about who was going to fund what and how much money and all that. And he made it very clear he wasn't intending to raise taxes, which I take him at his word. So with that being said, the spending affordability study has come out, and it indicates that the county is going to have about $57 million projected at current rates that we are going to have to spend, provided the taxes are not raised. And the county executive went on a radio program in January, mid-January, Eye on Annapolis with John Frenaye. And one of the things he noted there was that about $30 million of that $57 million has already been accounted for, that there's already things that they're going to have to spend it on. So that leaves us with about $27 million to play with, if you will. Does the administration believe that the use of this $500,000 out of that $27 million pot is the best use of the taxpayers' money? And I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out. Because from the way that I calculated it, looking at the Board of Education's budget, they're requesting teachers. Well, when they put in sort of the placeholder of how much a teacher would cost the system, they're estimating a cost of about $76,000. So again, from my math doing that, that's about 6 more teachers that we could hire for the cost of what we're doing here with the styrofoam, basically the same cost to the taxpayers. So I guess what I'm curious about is, has the administration considered all of that in taking the position that we are supporting this bill going forward?
Thank you for the question, Councilman. The short answer is no, because I believe that you are, well.
You can tell me if I'm mistaken. Go ahead.
I don't want to say that. But the way the school lunch program operates, there's two revenue sources. There is the federal assistance for free and reduced meals, and then everyone else who's not in that program pays $3, what have you, for a lunch. Okay, so that money that comes in is from those lunch fees. So if the cost to provide lunches goes up, our position as an administration is essentially we think the lunch fee should go up commensurately. Now, whether that's 3 cents, that's 5 cents, I mean, the math will work itself out. What I'm here to say is this year, upcoming, we are exploring ways to help the school system offset that initially. So I'm not proposing and I'm not suggesting the administration wants to or would provide $400 and some thousand of funding towards this. And so I would agree with you that that's not the best use of taxpayer dollars. But what I am suggesting is that we understand that this is an unfunded mandate to the school system, and we are willing to help soften the blow. But our expectation is that over time, the school lunch program itself, the prices would be adjusted in a way to make that net sustainable again.
Okay. And so what I had heard from the school system was that the reason they opposed this bill last year is because it was, as you noted, an unfunded mandate and there was no funding source. The reason that the school system is on board with this year is that it sounded like been representations made that they will not have to sort of come up with this money from another source, that the county is going to provide that. And that's why the school system is on board with this bill at this point. So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is the county committing to that $500,000 already out of that $27 million pot that we were talking about? Because that was what my understanding was from the school system's position when we were at the work session last week. So if I misunderstood, please tell me.
So I'll just say two things. First, I don't like it when the school system represents the administration's position, so I won't represent the school system's position, and Mr. Shaknovich can come down if he wants to. But the answer to your second question is no, the county is not prepared to shoulder $500,000 or whatever the number is in its totality to offset this.
Okay.
We're just interested in helping share the implementation with our partners at the school system.
Okay. So at this point then, if this passes, because we don't have any sort of a revenue stream tied to it, it is effectively an unfunded mandate on the school system for whatever the additional cost would be.
I believe that's what Mr. Shaknovich said at the work session.
Okay.
Councilwoman Rodvian?
I just wanted to.
I'm sorry, Mr.
Well, that's all right.
Oh.
Councilwoman Rodvian can go. I can come.
Okay.
I just wanted to respond. If the school system were to tack on an additional 5 cents, which would go for the 8-cent option, the 8-cent tray option, that would be a total. If you spread that out over 180 school days for the students, that is a total for an entire year of $4.50 per student for the entire year. Also, I think if we are looking at the possibility of the Montgomery County working as a contract rider to Montgomery County's 5.5-cent trays, that total, my rough calculations say that we shouldn't be looking at a $500,000 cost increase. We're actually looking at about a $240,000 increase. So I think that rider actually brings down the cost significantly. And even if it's spread amongst the students, I think a lot of people would agree that spending that extra $4.50 per year for the sake of our environment would be $4.50 very well spent.
Councilman Polkey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess my next question or line of questions, and again, I'm not sure who's appropriate to answer this, but my understanding from what the school system said at the work session is that they're looking at what we call compostable alternatives. The idea that these trays could then be placed in the composting stream, if you will, and therefore they don't wind up in landfills, which is obviously a positive. I guess my question would be, how are we going to take these trays, which are now covered in food waste, which generally keeps them from being able to go into the recycling stream, get them cleaned, get them into some sort of an appropriate composting facility, and then avoid them from going to the landfill? Because a lot of what I've read, because I've tried to do some research on this, is that many times, because of how saturated these products become and the costs that are involved with it, they ultimately wind up in the landfill anyway. And when they do, the problem is they're heavier than the polystyrene products, so therefore our tipping costs when we're taking them to the landfill are actually increasing. So it's not only just costing the county money on the front end where you're saying to the taxpayers this is going to cost more, but on the back end actually disposing of the product is costing more. So if someone could speak to that, I would appreciate it.
Councilman, I can't speak to what the school system procedure would be, to handle those. Perhaps Mr. Holthaus could speak generally to the county's composting ability, but...
Yeah, okay.
Good evening. I would say generally that would require the school system to manage those materials separately from the trash stream, and then have their contract provider of solid waste services move that material separately to a composting facility that could handle food waste and other organic waste.
And do they have that in place currently that you know of?
I do not know.
Okay. And do you have any sense if the schools have the capability at this point to separate the two?
Again, I would defer to the school system, but I would think in the kitchen operation...
Are we going to have the school system up here?
It's your meeting. You're welcome to invite him down, Councilman.
I would welcome him to come down if he
We
would
have a seat for
be
him
willing.
right here.
Good evening again. Alex Shekno, Chief Operating Officer. So we have had conversations with our contracted waste hauler, and no, they've been crystal clear with us that it would go into our general waste stream.
Okay.
So once it becomes food contaminated, it is no longer recyclable eligible. The only other alternative is it will go into our general waste stream along with every and any other thing. Again, remember, it is an organic product, so it is going to wind up in a landfill, but landfill as an organic product as opposed to something that's non-biodegradable.
Well, and I will say this, I actually read about that, and I've got an interesting Wall Street Journal article from January 2019, which talks about exactly that point and indicates that basically, while everyone believes, and I don't say this with any disrespect to you, but that, I would have thought this too, compostable goes into the landfill, and therefore you're easily able to break down and it's going to be better. In fact, for it to be broken down, these compostable products actually require some very specific conditions. They need certain heat, they need certain other elements applied to them to properly break down. And if they don't have those elements applied to them, then it appears that they basically just become like other trash just sitting there. So this belief that somehow these are compostable and therefore it's better for the environment, it's really a net zero. And in fact, I would argue it's less than a net zero in some ways, because again, talking about the tipping costs and the weight that these products are going to add vis-a-vis the polystyrene alternative, which frankly is lighter, which is part of the problem that Mr. Trumbauer noted. They break apart and they become more of a problem for the environment than a cardboard product, which just sits in place. That was what he had said. So I don't know if anybody can speak to that or not, but that was what I looked up.
But I appreciate your comments, Mr. Volke. Neither last Tuesday nor in a work session nor this evening have I ever used the word compostable.
I understand.
That's not a term. So it's an organic product I've not used nor proffered that given our operations that we either can, are positioned to, or intend to run a composting operation. It will go into our general waste stream equivalent to every other product that is not truly recyclable in accordance with the guidelines stipulated by the county government at the present time.
Okay. And that was what I wanted to be clear. This is going to go in the garbage just like any other product. So this will wind up in the general landfill just like any other product.
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hare and then Councilwoman Lacey.
I just had a couple of questions. I think we talked about at the work session, and I just want to be sure. If the price of the tray goes up by 5 cents, that's not necessarily what the price of each meal will go up, because it's my understanding that those students who are on free and reduced meal plans cannot have an increase in their cost. So that any increase in cost is disproportionately borne by those students who are otherwise paying for their meals. Is that true?
Yes, ma'am. That's correct. About 32% of our population participates in the federal and state free or reduced meal program, and there is a price fixed value in terms of our reimbursable rates from those. We cannot pass along any cost increases, otherwise we would violate the term and conditions of that reimbursable program and thus forego all of the federal and state money, which we would obviously never do. That puts us in a position then that whatever incremental cost delta would be borne by about 68% of the student population.
Okay. Do we know what that impact is? Has anybody done that math?
No, but in general, we're paying about 3 cents per serving now. The model that we've piloted and felt that works the best for us is about 8 cents.
8 cent model.
So
Okay.
that's about a 5% delta. But again, if you have a 5% delta applied even against about 70% of our population, you're talking about maybe 7 cents.
Right, 7 cents. Okay.
Just rough order of magnitude.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilwoman Lacey?
I just wanted to offer a comment to my council members and to all of you that my understanding of Bill 519, and I'm signed on as a co-sponsor, is that we are not requiring anybody to use compostable materials. So the debate, while interesting, is not necessarily one that we need to be having at this table tonight, and that all we are talking about doing is banning the use of expanded polystyrene foam materials, which I support, and that leaves to others the decision ultimately of what sorts of changes to be made to our waste stream and how we handle lots of different products, not just compostable ones, but that should be part of a more comprehensive conversation that I hope we'll be having.
Okay, any other comments before we go to public hearing? Okay, we will now open the public hearing. Remarks will be limited to 2 minutes. I do have folks who signed up on the sign-in sheet, and if they would come to the table and your name and address for the record. We'll start off with the first sheet here. Ms. Jennifer Aiken, Mr. Barrett Aiken, Mr. Griffin Aiken, Ms. Kim Lampier, Mr. Rick Kissel, and Ms. Martha, looks like Onsworth or Osworth. Hi, good evening, everyone. We'll start off with Ms. Jennifer Aiken.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to comment. I'm Jennifer Aiken, 8229 Bayside Drive, Pasadena, Maryland. I'm here tonight in support of this ban. I'm representing a Bodkin Elementary School as a parent, as the co-chair of our environmental fair. I'm also an educator at the aquarium, where we speak about conservation issues to students and visitors on a daily basis. So we're here really to support this ban. We'd like to see this ban go into place, and we are here really to urge you to ensure that Anne Arundel County schools comply and rid the cafeterias of these foam trays, which we have some examples here. Anne Arundel County, as you know, borders our precious Chesapeake Bay, and it contains miles of rivers that feed into it, and it's really, at this point, it's shameful and negligent that the county is that the schools are using, we were told 6 million trays. I've met with the food services folks last year about this and have been in contact with food services folks, but I just heard that it was even a higher number than that. It's really troubling. The use of these trays are just in stark contrast of what schools are trying to teach students, especially green schools. Students are taught to be good stewards of the bay, to learn about the hazards of these single-use plastics such as polystyrene. They're encouraged to make green choices, yet they walk into the cafeteria and they don't have an environmentally friendly option. So we're all aware that it's cheap and convenient, as discussed, and that is the message that Anne Arundel County is sending our children and families about its concern for environmental and public health. Cities, as we've discussed, cities have banned this in other countries, or even other countries, other counties in Maryland. They've already implemented these bans and swapped out the foam trays. We all aspire for Anne Arundel County schools to be leader and to set these examples, and don't our environment and our children deserve better? This irresponsible decision by adults is creating a potentially world-altering implications for our children and their children. And we don't believe this is a generational impact that should define this otherwise high-achieving and well-respected county. So we're asking you to please do the right thing, support this ban, and please encourage schools to make this change as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Aiken. Barrett, how are you?
My name is Bear Aiken, and I'm in 2nd grade at Bodkin Elementary School. My address is 8229 in Pasadena. I want polystyrene banned because when it gets in the bay or the ocean, sometimes animals eat it. Also, I'd like to buy lunch, but I don't want to because I know how bad it is for the environment. Please support this ban. Thank you.
Thank you, Barrett. Did you eat dinner yet? Yeah. Okay, good.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Councilwoman Lacey.
If I may, thank you. Barrett, I also have a second grader, and I just want to encourage you to continue your advocacy efforts because my second grader helped me get to where I am today in this chair. So good for you. Keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you. Griffin, how are you?
Okay, go ahead. Say your name.
My name is Griffin. My name is Griffin.
Hold this up and show them. What do you want to say? Go ahead, buddy.
It's okay, Griffin. Why are you here? What do you want to tell us?
That you don't want to have to what? You don't want to have to do what?
Clean up styrofoam every day.
Okay. Well, thank you.
We pick up a lot of trash in the carpool line.
Great.
The styrofoam trays being this, and he's my little green hero. He picks up trash every day.
Great. Well, thank you, Griffin. We appreciate you coming out. Did you eat dinner? Good. Okay. Thank you. Ms. Lampier?
Yes, good evening. This is a hard act for me to follow tonight. Chairman Pruski and members of the council, for the record, I am Kim Lampier. I'm the advocacy director at Trash Free Maryland. I live in Catonsville, Maryland, but we represent citizens throughout the state. We work toward a Maryland that's free from trash, litter, debris, all of those awful things that we see driving down the side of the road, out in our boats, hiking through the woods. Most of the litter that's found in our waterways comes from food packaging, and we're seeing approximately 25 to 40% of that is EPS foam that we're picking up. The problem with it is that it's volume. If you stack 20 cups of foam versus 20 solo cups or paper coffee cups, you can tell what that volume immediately is. And that is just space that is taking up, that's in the landfill. It's just consuming more space than it needs for what it is. Foam food packaging cannot be recycled anywhere in Maryland, again, because we were talking earlier about the grease and the contamination of it. Finally, when Montgomery County schools implemented switch from foam food trays to paper food trays, they were able to recycle 50 tons more per month of paper and cardboard, once again, keeping that out of their landfills. So we appreciate your consideration of this, and we ask for a favorable report and passage of Bill 5-19. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rick Kissel, I do not see, so we're going to move forward. Martha?
Is this right? Am I on? Okay, great. Good evening. My name is Martha Ainsworth, and I'm from the Zero Waste Committee of the Maryland chapter of the Sierra Club, here in support of the bill. Rick Kissel, the vice chair of the Arundel Sierra Club group, is recovering from oral surgery today. So he sent you by email attachment shortly before the meeting his testimony. I have 2 hard copies here, but I urge you to read it. It has a lot of evidence in it. He makes 4 points and supported with substantial evidence. First, EPS foam litter is especially harmful to the marine environment. Foam food containers are not recycled or compostable. There are alternative food containers already in wide use, and they're affordable. And bans on foam food containers are already working in Maryland's 2 largest counties. Now, I'm here to provide some insight on the experience of Prince George's County's foam ban, in case you have any questions about it. The Prince George's County ban was on the provision and sale of EPS foam containers. It became effective July 1st, 2016. Prior to the ban, the Sierra Club conducted a survey of random sampling of eating establishments. A quarter of restaurants had no foam at all to begin with. Almost all the rest had a mix of different container types, so they were already aware of where they could get other kinds of containers. Only 3% had exclusively foam. In 2017, the Sierra Club surveyed 465 businesses and 45 shopping centers in central and northern Prince George's County. 3/4 of the businesses were compliant with the ban, and at the second pass 6 months later, compliance surpassed 90%. There's been a decline in EPS foam litter on the roadsides and in the Anacostia River, at the materials recycling facility, and the county landfill. The main reason for noncompliance is lack of information. Once informed, the businesses have complied. No fines have been levied. Compliance with the ban has not been controversial. We urge you to support this bill.
Thank you so much.
I'll be
This
glad to
panel is
answer
dismissed.
questions.
We'll move to our next group. Thank you all again for coming. Priscilla Kanaya, Brianna Bogard, Claire Miller, Nico Papa, Krista McCreary, and Ann Schifferly. There's one more chair on the end. Priscilla, name and address?
635 Andrew Hill Road in Arnold. I'm a constituent of Amanda's, okay. And you want copies of my thing? Okay, all right. So good evening, council members. I stand here tonight to extend my apologies from the people of my generation. We were raised to believe that we were the privileged generation, that resources were unlimited and innovation was always good. We searched for the quicker, cheaper solutions as long as they made life easier. Among other things, my generation found ways to mass produce plastic and, even better, styrofoam. So when it became apparent that there might be some limitations and we must do something to protect our environment, we were told that all this plastic and styrofoam was recyclable. Put a triangle on the product and we're happy. Turns out we believe the unbelievable. Styrofoam, or EPS foam as we now call it, cannot be recycled, it's not compostable, and in fact, once created, it can never be destroyed. It can and does fill our landfills. It is incinerated only to be turned into CO2 to pollute the air. It gets thrown onto highways and into our fields. Worst of all, it gets into our lakes, rivers, bays, and oceans. When it sinks and is under great pressure, it compresses down to small balls, which are consumed by sea creatures. When the fish or other creatures are fed to us, we ingest the EPS foam as we do plastic that breaks down into tiny particles. I was on Andros Island in the Bahamas last September. And this sparsely populated island faces the U.S., and its beaches are overrun by our EPS foam and other plastic products that floated over. You can only imagine what's in the ocean between the land masses. I ask that you give your full support to the ban on EPS products. These products can be replaced by recyclable or compostable products at very minimal cost. I also ask that you consider creating a composting program in Anne Arundel County. Please don't make the mistakes we made in the 60s and 70s. Please be forward-thinking, protect our land, water, and air, and create the composting program. The last note I want to make is that I spoke to several restaurant owners, employees, and managers, and they were very, very supportive of our effort and thanked me and said, please, please get more signatures, do this. All right? Thank you.
Yeah. Brina or Brianna? Bryn, okay.
So I'm Bryn Bogard, 617 Canal Lane, Annapolis. I'm a senior at Broadneck High School, and I'm the president of our Eco Action Team, which is like our green club. And we do like a bunch of activities, like we go camping, do composting projects. We do a bunch of cleanups. We did one at Sandy Point State Park. We just do a bunch around the school and stuff like that. And one of the biggest things that we find at all these cleanups is this foam. And it's kind of frustrating to us because we have all these, we're a green school, and we have all these classes, environmental science, biology, all this, and they teach us that the foam is so bad and that plastic is so bad. And then we go to lunch and we have to use these trays every single day, and we have no other choice. We have to use them. If you want lunch, you have to get one of these trays, which is kind of frustrating to us because it's going to be our generation that has to fix the problem one day. It's going to be us that has to find a solution to this in 20 years. And so I just think that you should consider the voices of the students of Anne Arundel County too, because I don't think they'll care about paying the extra 4 cents when it comes to saving our planet that we're going to have to save anyway if you don't do this right now.
Thank you. Claire Miller?
I have some written testimony here. Good evening. My name is Claire Miller. I live at 926 King James Landing Road in Annapolis, Maryland. I am speaking tonight on behalf of Julie Shea, who is a volunteer with the Anne Arundel County Sierra Club. She was unable to be here tonight. You should have I've submitted a copy of her written testimony to be distributed to you. The Anne Arundel County Sierra Club conducted a survey of restaurants in council districts 1, 3, 5, and 7 in shopping centers in June of last year. They talked to 63 eating establishments representing a mix of sit-down restaurants, fast food establishments, and carry-out restaurants that have varying needs for disposable containers. Paper, plastic, and reusable containers are far more prevalent than EPS foam containers. More than 80% of those establishments surveyed reported using containers made of paper, cardboard, or plastic, while 41% had EPS foam containers. Taken together, 58% of establishments surveyed do not use foam at all. 40% use a mix of foam and other types of containers, and one establishment, representing 2% of the sample, used exclusively foam containers for taking home leftovers. But it was a buffet restaurant and few were used. In assembling these findings, it was striking that the vast majority of chains surveyed are not using EPS foam containers. 3 managers of chain establishments reported that headquarters in another state make the decision about the type of containers to be used, and they said their preference would be to have no foam. Several independently owned establishments have made the switch to non-EPS foam containers. Many others expressed a willingness to switch and a desire for more information on non-foam products. Each of those who expressed a preference to switch cited the environment as their primary reason. So based on this survey of restaurants, most are already using a mix of other types of containers in their establishments, so it doesn't appear that this would be a harm to their business. So as a citizen of this county and based on this survey, I ask for your support for this ban. Thank you.
Thank you. Nico Papa?
Hello, my name is Nico Papa. I live at 8395 Lynn Circle, Pasadena, Maryland, and attend Buchan Elementary School. I was very disappointed when Steve Hsu vetoed the last polystyrene bill. I don't know about you, but I don't like the fact that the polystyrene lunch trays leach styrene into our food. My friends and I don't have a choice about this if we want to buy our lunches. I hope that you and the county executive pass this polystyrene ban.
Thank you. Kristen McCreary.
Hi. Hi, my name is Kristen McCreary, and I live at 410 Park Creek Road, Pasadena, Maryland. I'm speaking here on behalf of my children who could not be here tonight. They go to Bodkin Elementary School, and I teach at a local green school. I feel it's very important that we pass this ban on polystyrene. My children are sad that the trays are still in the schools. It feels very contradictory to them to call themselves a green school and then produce the vast amount of non-biodegradable waste that these trays produce, just to save some money. For the sake of our environmental future, please pass this ban.
Thank you. Ann Schifferly.
Ann Schifferly, League of Women Voters of Anne Arundel County. I reside at 713 Linden Grove Place in Ortonton. The League of Women Voters of Anne Arundel County supports the ban on polystyrene containers. The League's solid waste position, established in the 1990s, supports source reduction, waste materials recovery, recycling, and composting. Therefore, we support Bill 519. Just on a personal note, I would like to say my husband and I, whenever we go to restaurants, bring our own containers to the restaurant, just in the event that it would be leftovers. So, and as long as these containers hold up, we bring them when they're no longer serviceable. We recycle, and we recycle everything we can. Thank you.
Thank you to this panel. We're going to call up the next group, if you would come forward. James Schifferly, Melvin Thompson, Kaylee Locklear-Toll, Lorenzo Bellamy, and Robert Smith.
Good afternoon, honorable members of the council. My name for the record is Kaylee Locklear-Toll.
1 second, sorry. Mr. Schifferly, you're on the list. Did you want to speak? Okay, sorry. I just want to make sure we go through the list. And we had Melvin Thompson next. Or if you want to let her go, that's fine. Okay, go ahead.
So again, for the record, my name is Kaylee Locklear-Toll, here on behalf of the Maryland Retailers Association, respectfully in opposition to this legislation. And I wanted to start by saying that retail has massively ramped up sustainability efforts, particularly over the past 10 years, and yes, we have a lot of work to do. However, at the end of the day, banning products does not solve the overarching litter and recycling issue that's at the very crux of what we're talking about. Councilman Volke, thank you very much for making those points earlier. We agree with you that banning polystyrene to move to another product that is not recyclable costs more, will end up in landfill, and won't be recycled just doesn't seem to make sense here. And I also wanted to draw to your attention, and I'm sure you are all aware, that at the state level there is legislation pending, likely to pass in some form, and we urge the council to wait on this legislation. Retailers that are multi-jurisdictional operators already have to contend with differing laws in Baltimore City, Prince George's County, Montgomery County, and Washington, D.C. And to give you some examples here, eggs, for instance, is exempt from various pieces of legislation. At the state level, we're currently having that conversation. That's not included in this bill. Vegetables such as mushrooms, we have a mushroom farm here in Maryland, would be put at a competitive disadvantage. So at the end of the day, we would ask the council to wait. I'm glad to answer any questions in the realm of the grocery industry and the impact that this will have on our retailers here in the county. Again, we urge an unfavorable report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Melvin Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the council, I'm Melvin Thompson. I represent the Restaurant Association of Maryland, and we too are opposed to this legislation. And we believe that such a ban for our industry would significantly increase the cost of disposables without any measurable environmental benefit. Of particular concern to our industry is the cost and also the performance of the alternatives. The cost of these alternatives tend to be 2 to 3 times more than the polystyrene foam products that are currently used, and such costs are very challenging to absorb for narrow profit margin industries like ours. The average restaurant averages only about a 4% profit margin, and so that means that for every $1,000 in higher costs, it requires at least $25,000 in increased sales just to break even, and that's very difficult for businesses like ours, and we cannot pass that on to price-sensitive customers. It's also very important to keep in mind that polystyrene foam is a very durable and effective way of maintaining food temperature and food quality, and that's why restaurants use these containers. And there are some restaurants that have switched. They can build that into their pricing, but there are other restaurants that do a lot of carry-out business, have low price points that cannot build that into their pricing in a way that customers can accept, and that is why they continue to use this product. Once contaminated, some of these alternatives alternatives are no longer recyclable, and some of the alternatives, like polyethylene-coated paper, for example, are neither recyclable nor compostable. We believe it is poor public policy to force businesses to use more expensive alternatives that will likely end up in the same landfill. We believe that business owners should be able to make the decisions about their own food packaging at a price and that they can afford. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Lorenzo Bellamy?
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Lorenzo Bellamy, and I'm here on behalf of Dart Container Corporation in opposition to this bill. I'm not going to repeat what Melvin and Kaylee said, but I just wanted to let you all know that I think what you all are trying to accomplish is a litter issue and trying to reduce litter. And I would suggest that litter is the problem, not banning the product. Banning the product will not solve your litter problem. The same person that discards the alternative products is the same person in attitude that is going to litter the alternative products. So the person that's littering with polystyrene is also going to litter with the alternative products. I think what's important and what's needed is an anti-litter education and enforcement program. I think that's a better use of your money and time. And I think it accomplishes what all of you all have said to be your overarching goal, and even the proponents of this bill behind us. I think behavioral change is a better and sustaining action to take. It's a better idea for us to work together towards an anti-litter campaign and a recycling campaign. It's my understanding that no county and the state of Maryland does not have a commercial composting or recycling program. And I think that would be more important. That would be where I would suggest you put your money. There were some comments about the $50,000 that would be saved from not having the densifier. Yet there was also some comments about the cost of the alternative products to the Anne Arundel County schools. And I believe at the work group, it was suggested that the products that you would use would cost anywhere from $380,000 to, I believe, almost $500,000, not the $290,000. Because I think the school board testified that the cups or the polystyrene trays that they would need to replace the ones that are currently being used would cost about that amount, and not the low amount of $290,000. So for these reasons and what's already been articulated, we suggest that, one, you wait for the state to do what they need to do, and we urge an unfavorable on this bill. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Bellamy. Mr. Robert Smith?
Yes, Robert Smith, again, it's 1487 Chatham Court in Crofton, Maryland. Good evening. As I said, I'm here to speak on behalf of the approximate 900 registered members of the Maryland Green Party who live here in Anne Arundel County. We support Bill 519, which will prohibit the use and sale of expanded polystyrene or styrofoam products in our county. Our position is firmly rooted in the values of the Green Party, two of which are ecological wisdom, futuristic, and sustainability, which not only call for environmental stewardship and personal responsibility, but also call on us to live in a sustainable manner for the benefit of future generations. We're asking you to join with the City of Annapolis in recognizing the detrimental impacts of this material that it has on our habitat and our streams here in the county. I also want to state that I believe when I was here last year when a similar bill was before the council, that when they try to when it was mentioned about was there a viable byproduct from the recycling of this material, it was stated that there was no end product that was marketable that could be sold. So basically, at the end of the day, this still is going to end up in our landfills, and basically. It's basically passing on private industries making certain choices that it's basically passing on a cost to us as the public, because we're the ones that have to pay for the tax dollars to mitigate all the detrimental impacts of this material, which especially when we do know that there's viable alternatives that are available out there. So, so I would again would encourage you all to consider passing this ban. I think it's time and help us as a county take leadership on this. So.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. This panel's dismissed.
Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, Mr. Volkey has a question.
Thank you, I apologize. I had a question probably for Ms. Locklear-Toll, most likely. As I read this bill, it applies to grocery stores as well as food service establishments and what have you. In my district, I have two, at least, relatively smaller grocery stores, Angels and Lowers, which are sort of local businesses that have been there for many, many years, many generations. As I read this, if they were to prepare food on their premises and then package them in polystyrene-filled containers, they're not allowed to do that and sell that. But if an out-of-county packager and processor puts that food in a polystyrene container, that can still come into the county and still be sold. Am I missing something with what this bill is requiring?
You are not, and good for you for having two of the last independent grocers left in this state in your district, by the way.
We're very proud of them. So to me, I guess, what if any concerns do the grocery stores? Have you heard from any of your members about concerns of unfair competition in the sense that they're going to have a difficulty marketing their sort of internal products vis-a-vis the products that are coming in from out of county?
So something we talk a lot about is making sure that our grocers are trying to carry Maryland products, and this is where egg cartons come into play here. Grocers are, it's a highly competitive industry. Profit margin is between 1% and 3%. And when they're thinking about purchasing some type of product, they're always looking for the cheapest product possible that they can offer to consumers so that they will continue to shop in their store. I think we all kind of understand that concept. In Maryland, there are 6 egg producers here in our state. And what's really interesting is if they no longer are, and this is a bigger state issue, but thinking about in the county as well, if they can't have polystyrene, we're going to start shipping in all of our eggs from out of the state that will still be coming in in polystyrene. So whether it's out of the state or out of the county, you're going to continue to see polystyrene in egg cartons. The sad part is it's not going to be Maryland eggs that you see.
And that's true for products other than eggs, for really anything, is that way I read it. Do you read it that way too?
Yeah, because of interstate commerce laws, the state, the county, any locality is not going to be able to stop products coming in that are packaged from out of the state. That's interstate commerce.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Fiedler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilman Volkey essentially asked the question that I was going to ask. I do want to acknowledge that I too have 2 small grocers in my district, Growls and Green Valley Market. In full disclosure, they have not contacted me about this bill, but that was a question that I had. I did want to ask as far as the market is concerned, because we were presented with 3 different trays for the school system. I wasn't overly they didn't thrill me, the 2 of the options. But is the market there? Have we gotten to the best product possible, or is this still? Are we still evolving in that regard as far as a replacement product?
So, because I watched the video on that and the presentation, and my apologies for not being here at the work session because I was at the legislature. My understanding is one of the products was polyethylene lined. And what's interesting about that is these cups that people look at that are paper cups that are lined with plastic, they're not recyclable at all. You actually have to boil out that plastic in order to separate it from the paper, and then maybe only if it's not soiled could you possibly recycle it. So that's a problem there. With regard to your question, we're not there at all as far as comparable products go. And the frustrating part is polystyrene can be recycled. And because it has the highest yield on the recyclables market right now, there's an opportunity for new revenue to come into the county, which is why we started to go down the path of purchasing a densifier and adding it to streamline recycling. For the record as well, I live in the county, so I do participate in the recycling program. So, I mean, that's something I think a lot of consumers would like to see, is the ability to recycle any and all products that they're touching, if possible.
Mr. Chairman, may I also just chime in as...
Unless whoever asked the question.
I'll let them chime in.
Yeah.
Thank you. So on behalf of DART, you asked a question about whether or not the products are, whether or not we have the products, and I wanted to let you know that forward thinking, and I think all you all have mentioned, looking into the future, so we are not ignorant to the fact that new products should be coming online. And so research R&D is being done to look at products that would be sustainable, recyclable, compostable, all the things that you were talking about. The alternative products that we do offer are recyclable. The current products that we offer are recyclable as well, the polystyrene.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilwoman Lacey?
I understand that EPS can be recycled, and I know I'm familiar with the background of our looking into a densifier, but I'd like to know whether you can perhaps provide some insight on the cost to actually operate a densifier, given that the EPS is contaminated when it comes into the stream usually, and would, especially for food service applications, it would require water, which we can't really take as just freely available in its clean state anymore, but that's also a very important consideration in our county. Water is not free to clean EPS. So where is that other environmental impact and cost accounted for in the argument that densifying EPS foam is overall a better way to go than simply banning it?
Well, I think number one, excuse me, because China has stopped accepting the majority of plastic products, the concern now is when you all issue your MOUs for your waste management contracts, you're going to start to have problems here, because if they can't make a profit on their business, that's how they make their money, is they turn around and they sell the recyclable products to different entities that are interested in purchasing those products. So I think that the county in general is about to start to run into a problem in the recyclables market. When we think about that, bringing something online that we could turn around and sell that would bring revenue into those systems might help stabilize some of the recycling programs that are currently offered. I do want to mention too, so Southern California did a study about this, and they looked into whether or not they wanted to start to institute bans like this one or not. And they made a decision that these bans, and there are a ton of things that we could start to ban, are going to end up costing you more in the long run when it goes to landfill. And I think that's the bigger concern. That cost goes through the roof because polystyrene weighs 2 to 3 times less by weight and volume than any comparable product. So those tipping fees, as mentioned earlier, go through the roof. So you're about to see exorbitant costs start to happen in landfill. And by the way, any sort of in cap that comes in on a retail product because of interstate commerce laws is protected. And that's actually the majority of polystyrene that's in the waste stream too.
So your answer went well beyond my actual question. But I think, again, returning our focus to the ban and then what is actually proposed in this bill is simply banning the use of EPS foam in food service containers. And notwithstanding that the majority of EPS is used for other shipping applications in which it is generally not contaminated in the same way that food is. Overall, the tipping point actually seems to be, given that the argument is generally EPS for food services is a small percentage of what goes through our overall waste stream, that why should it actually matter? What we're talking about are negligible fractions of percentages of additional costs that may get passed on to consumers, but could have an environmental impact that when we fully try to quantify those costs far outweighs the specific cost of the ban. And there are other things that we can do and that we should look at, such as actually moving away from single stream recycling to having some separate streams, such as for recycling glass, which we know can be profitably recycled. And that we would also, if we separated our streams, we would improve the quality of our paper recycling and our cardboard recycling and those kinds of things. But the EPS foam in a consumer setting remains this thing that's 98% air, 2% styrene, very difficult to remove unless the consumer takes the action to put it where it should go and not fly away, or the level of consumer responsibility that would be required to actually make significant changes, as opposed to give grounds for the costs that I understand you be talking about. Maybe that's, I think those are the two things that are maybe inappropriate to compare versus other options that we would have as recycling streams and consideration of revenues. So I think when we look at the very narrow purpose of this bill and its application to food service products, the other arguments that you're making are really going far beyond the scope of what we're trying to do. But thank you for coming in and making it.
Can I just the food service?
No.
Any of the council members want to entertain that? Okay.
I'll let
Mr. Volkey.
I'll let Mr. Thompson speak.
And I'm sorry, just very quickly, because you mentioned food service application specifically, and when you look at the entire litter stream, polystyrene foam for food service application is only about 1.5% of the entire litter stream. And so what this proposal would do is significantly increase the cost of those products for businesses that currently use polystyrene foam for food service to address the small percentage that actually ends up in the litter stream. The majority of polystyrene foam products used in food service end up where they belong, disposed of properly in the regular garbage.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah,
I'd invite you to provide statistics showing that.
Sure, we'll be happy to.
I've read that the city of San Francisco saw a reduction in its litter from EPS foam by 41%. I've read that EPS foam from food containers makes up 15% of the litter found on roadways. So you'd have to make a different case and maybe further in advance of this hearing to try to establish those figures and help us have a robust debate. That's just my respectful suggestion to you.
Thank you. Any further questions for this panel? Okay, you're all dismissed. At this point, we've gone through the list of folks who have signed up. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on 519? Please come forward at this time. Once again, last call for 519. Good evening. Once you get settled, if you just state your name and your address, and Madam Secretary will give you a sign-in sheet there. Yeah, if you'd like to start and then.
Oh, okay, I'm
yeah.
down. Hi, my name is Katie McCord. I live at 104 St. Francis Court, Severna Park, Maryland. Good evening, council members. I can't agree with the Aiken family's concerns about what we teach and what we do. I work at Severna Park Elementary School as the school counselor, and I spend a lot of time in the cafeteria, and I see waste, waste, waste. And I didn't realize how many, I see hundreds of trays a day, but apparently it's over 9.6 million trays used. So that's even more concerning because they're not recycled, they're not biodegradable, and the chemicals in polystyrene can leach into contaminated food. And this is what we feed our children hot foods on. It's not only the waste, but in manufacturing, they use petroleum, which is a heavy pollutant, and creates hydrofluorocarbons, which are also one of our climate change concerns because it affects our ozone negatively. So we can't shortchange our kids' health and our environment because we're concerned about tax cuts. The environment and the health has a cost, and I don't think that we're always taking that into account. And we can't sacrifice our health and environment to remain cheap. To remain cheap. I heard the word cheap. Sure, businesses want cheap, but we're beyond that. We're beyond that point. We need to be more serious, and we need to be a leader. Let's not wait for the state of Maryland. Let's move, let's make a difference, and let's lead because we can. Thank you, and I hope that you will go for this amendment.
Thank you. Sir, you have the floor. Your name and address.
Stephen Kratzer, 1708 Woodlaw Road, Annapolis. I'm in favor of this bill and anything else we can do to reduce the amount of EPS packaging that ends up in the environment. As has been pointed out, when this packaging ends up in the Chesapeake Bay, it either gets pulverized or sinks and forms little balls. Either way, it gets eaten by fish and seafood, fish and shellfish, which then get eaten by us. And I don't want those plastic particles in my diet. So I think even if it does raise the cost by a little bit, it's a worthwhile expenditure. As a taxpayer and as a consumer, as a customer of fast food restaurants, I'm willing to pay a little bit more to keep this plastic out of the environment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. This panel is dismissed. The public hearing on bill number 519 is now closed. Madam Secretary, could you please read the title of bill number 519?
Bill number 519, an ordinance concerning licensing food service facilities, polystyrene food service products.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Is there any further discussion? Okay, my understanding is that we have an amendment. Madam Secretary, could you please read amendment number 1?
Amendment number 1. This amendment changes the effective date of the prohibition against the use and sale of expanded polystyrene products at food service facilities from 1 year to 2 years.
Okay, do we have a motion to adopt this amendment?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Volke, this is your amendment, if you'd like to speak on it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So obviously I have a number of concerns about this bill, but one of them is obviously that there is pending legislation at the state level already which may preempt this issue and ultimately deal with the problem that is being addressed. So I believe that if we were able to amend this bill to an effective date of 2 years from now, that we will more likely than not be able to have this issue resolved at the state level, even if we were to pass this ban. Additionally, I'm concerned about the funding component because as I was discussing with the representative from the administration, Mr. Trumbauer, I'm not clear on how this is going to be funded or on where this is going to come out in the budget process. And I think that we need an effective date a little further in the future to be able to allow at least a budget cycle to go through and determine how we're going to use the, as I stated, about $27 million extra dollars that it seems to do the things that all of us campaigned on, which were to help pay teachers more, to help have more police, to help have more fire. And we all campaigned on those things, and I think that it's important that we figure out how that's going to look before we are taking a piece of what seems to be a relatively small pot, and the county executive has said he's not going to be raising taxes, so that pot's not going to get a whole lot bigger. So if that's the case, then I think we need to really figure out where are our priorities on this, and if this is a higher priority to this county than hiring more teachers or police or fire, well, then I guess we can have that discussion. But I would posit that that's not what I've heard from my constituents for the most part. So that's why I believe that this is an important amendment, and I would ask that my fellow members on the council support me.
Mr. Trumbauer, administration response to the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris Trumbauer with the County Exec's Office. I mean, we'll defer to the sponsor on you know, her opinion and the co-sponsors on this amendment to the bill. I'll just say the administration supports the original implementation date in the bill. We heard the school system testify at the work session that they're prepared to move forward even sooner than the bill would mandate, starting with the next school year in September. My understanding, the state legislation, their effective date as it stands now is January 1st, 2020. This amendment would push us out a full year after that, meaning that if we were to adopt this amendment, pass the bill, and the state was to pass its legislation as is, we'd be a full year and change behind where the rest of the state is. So I would respectfully say the administration opposes this amendment. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Volke, and then...
I just have a question for Mr. Trumbauer about that statement. So,
sure.
If the state passes the ban, the county would still be under the state ban, as I understand it. And if we were to pass something more restrictive than the state, we could do that. But we're at least at a minimum going to be covered by what the state is doing. So we wouldn't necessarily be behind the state. We would just be where the rest of the state is. And then a year later, if this was to pass, and if this winds up being more restrictive, that would be a year after the effective date. Is that correct?
With Councilman, typically, if the state passes legislation and a local county has its code existing that speaks to that issue, you know, generally it does not preempt the local. I don't know if there's specific language in the state bill that speaks to that. I can't answer that definitively. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilwoman Rabian.
With all due respect, Councilman Volke, I would oppose your amendment, as I'm sure you would have predicted. We've spent a lot of time this evening talking about costs, and I think we are very heavily focused on monetary costs. We're focusing constantly on dollars, but there are so many immeasurable costs of our current practice of using styrofoam. This material, in theory, in a wonderful world, in a
perfect world, well, maybe this wouldn't be a perfect world, but it would end up in a landfill. But in reality, no restaurant, no food service business can guarantee that all of the product that they sell in styrofoam will end up in a landfill. The reality is it ends up on our roadsides. Once it's on our roadsides, it drifts into the air and ends up in our waterways. It breaks down into small little particles and ends up in the Chesapeake Bay. And I believe that that is central to our livelihood. That is the lifeblood of Anne Arundel County. And I don't know that there is a dollar figure that we can put on that. As we talk about costs, we need to talk about the costs beyond just dollars. We need to think about the cost to future generations of taking care of this mess. We need to talk about the costs of health. One of the speakers brought up the impact of hot food on polystyrene may have health implications, especially for young people whose bodies are developing. So when we talk about costs, I hope we don't continually focus only on dollar figures, because there are many costs that cannot be quantified in that way. Finally, with respect to the argument about the potential state ban, I believe that us taking action could send a message to the state saying this is something that Anne Arundel County supports. We believe it's important here, and give the state further motivation to step forward with their ban. And so for that reason, I would not support a delay of any kind. Let's pass this bill this evening and encourage the state to do the same and have the entire state protected, not just our county.
Okay, any further discussion on this amendment? Okay, Madam Secretary, please call, or could you please read amendment number 1?
I read it.
Okay, then we'll go ahead with the roll call on amendment number 1.
Ms. Hare.
Aye.
Ms. Lacy.
Nay.
Ms. Pickard.
No.
Mr. Volkey.
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler.
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian.
Nay.
Mr. Pruski.
Nay.
3 in the affirmative, 4 in the negative. Amendment number 1 is defeated.
Okay, now that the amendment failed, we're going to call the roll on Bill 519. Is there any further discussion on the bill? Okay, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on Bill number 519.
Ms. Hare.
I'd just like to explain my vote really quickly as we go, and I have really struggled with this bill. I've gone back and forth in my head 1,000 times. But at the end of the day, our job is to pass a balanced budget and look at things from a fiscal side. I hear the policy piece that it is detrimental to the environment. I understand that. I think that it is sound policy. However, I have a concern with this fiscal consequence. Essentially, we have an unfunded mandate, and we are faced with only 2 decisions at the end of the day. The first is we increase the cost of lunches to the students, or the second is the county covers the cost. We have heard from the administration tonight that covering the cost is not something they intend to do on a recurring basis, and that they would be looking to the school to take that cost on. We have heard from the school that this time around only were sort of neutral on the bill because they expected the county to put forth the funding, and that the reason they opposed it in the past was because it was an unfunded mandate and the county wasn't putting forth the funds. So we're sort of in this no man's land, stuck in the middle. We have 7 budget hearings coming up for the next budget, the first of which is next week in my district. So from a funding priority standpoint, this is something the residents certainly could tell us over the next few weeks. I wish that, in a sense, we were looking at this a month from now, after we've had a number of these budget hearings, so we could hear what the residents say in terms of their priorities. Because I am cognizant of the fact that more teachers in the schools is a very high priority, and $500,000 goes a long way towards hiring some new teachers. And I don't hear from the administration or the schools that $500,000 towards a ban on polystyrene, in what they would have to replace the polystyrene with, is more important than $500,000 worth of new teachers. So because of that, I am going to vote nay, but I would be happy to reconsider this at a later date after the budget hearings have come up.
Continue with the roll.
Okay, so Ms. Hare, your vote is?
Nay. Nay.
Okay. Ms. Lacy?
Aye.
Ms. Pickard?
Aye.
Mr. Volkey?
I'd like to explain my vote as well, if I may, briefly, and I'll try to be brief. I understand that however I vote on this will be the only thing that people look at, and frankly, I'm sure that people will consider that and say, oh, well, this person, may or may not like the environment based on their vote. Frankly, that's very frustrating to me, because we don't exist in a vacuum, and we don't have the ability to simply sit up here and say, I like the environment, therefore everything should happen that we want to happen. Personally, I think that every one of us can make a continuing choice for alternatives, and I really appreciate the young men who came down here from my district, Bodkin Elementary School. My wife actually went to Bodkin Elementary School, so great people come out of there. I would love to see some sort of a campaign in the schools by the students, who we heard from multiple students, to petition the school board to make this another option for them. As opposed to banning the product entirely, give people the choice to be able to have a different alternative. Ask the school board not only to say you can't do this, but to say we are going to vote with our voice and our choice. We are willing to pay more for this product. We will spend that money. We want to do that. But I have a problem when we mandate that across the board. I think this should absolutely be an option, and I would love to see the school board do that. But the biggest problem I have with this is it frankly doesn't solve the problem that the administration and I've heard many people talk about, which is this litter issue. And I think that it was Mr. Bellamy who I believe talked about this as well. This is not going to solve the problem of litter. This stuff is still going to wind up in the waste stream. It's still going to wind up in the landfill. And frankly, it's going to be more expensive to dispose of than the polystyrene alternative. That was played out very clearly. So I have a problem if we're sitting there, because this doesn't solve the problem that they're seeking to solve. The problem is to solve a litter problem. You're not solving that with this. Additionally, we've talked about the costs extensively. I won't go into all that. And I've talked about the option that people should have the ability on their own to elect to go to places that do not use these products. If you go to a carryout place and they use a polystyrene product and you are vehemently opposed to using a polystyrene product and having that in the waste stream, then you should walk away and take your business elsewhere. That business will get the picture. And frankly, I believe that's what the Sierra Club noted in their supporting comments here, which indicated that many of these businesses have already moved away from this product. Why? Because the market is demanding it. Because the consumers are saying, we don't want to go to a place that uses this product that is harmful to the environment, and we care enough to go to another facility which will in fact support the choice that we have made, which is to benefit the environment. I believe that's the appropriate way to handle this problem of the environmental issue and getting this product out of the market, if you will. There are always going to be people who look for the lowest cost alternative. But the fact that many of these restaurants, in fact, it sounded like the majority have really moved away from this, shows you that the market is having an impact and consumers are having an impact. I'm also concerned about the grocery stores, which I brought up, because frankly, I think that that's problematic when you're putting our in-county producers at a disadvantage as compared to out-of-county producers. Again, we want to encourage Maryland-based products. Frankly, we want to encourage Anne Arundel County-based products. This is going to go against that. This is going to harm that. This is going to put in-county producers at a disadvantage to out-of-county producers. And I think that is just completely not the policy or the message that we want to send to our hardworking Anne Arundel County business people. And I also want to note, someone indicated that we shouldn't be necessarily worrying about tax cuts, and that that's what this is about. It's not. It's actually about a tax hike. It's actually about the concern of the increase in taxes, which inevitably is going to come if this passes, because there is going to have to be a funding source for the Anne Arundel County Public Schools to be able to go ahead and implement this. And that cost is going to be borne either by the percentage of people who do not get free and reduced lunches, or it's going to come out more generally to the county as a whole, in which case, frankly, this is what's comical about it, then that group that's already on free and reduced lunches is going to be paying for it anyway. Because if it comes out of the general coffers, those individuals have to pay taxes, so it goes into the stream anyway. So again, there are a number of things about this that I'm concerned about that frankly don't make any sense to me, but I do appreciate the arguments of the proponents of this bill who are noting that this product is something that we should be getting rid of. And I don't disagree with you. In fact, I think the right way to do that is what's been happening over the past 10, 15 years, which is that the market is responding to consumer demands. And that is what's happened. The Sierra Club report even covers that. I also think that the state legislation is probably going to solve this problem anyway. But for all those reasons, I will vote no on this legislation.
Ms. Fiedler.
I too would like to make brief comments. This was a tough one for me. I avoid this product at all costs. I will go out of my way to go to places of business that don't use it. I've been known to pull it out of my trash can and wrap it in tape to make sure that it doesn't break apart. But I have to look at the knowns and the unknowns. The unknown is the quantified costs that we talked about to the environment, but the other unknown is the funding source, and I really tried through my line of questioning at the work session and here tonight to pinpoint exactly where the funding source is coming from, and I still don't have a clear picture. And we're talking as much as $500,000, worst case scenario, because that's how you have to plan if you're being fiscally responsible. So for that reason and that reason alone, I am a nay.
Ms. Rodvian.
Aye.
Mr. Pruski?
Aye.
4 in the affirmative, 3 in the negative. Bill number 519 is passed.
Thank you, thank you. We still have business on the agenda. Resolution number 319, Madam Secretary, please read the title of resolution number 319.
Resolution number 319, resolution approving Anne Arundel County's 2019 Financial Assurance Plan for compliance with the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Phase 1 Municipal Separate Stormwater Sewer System Permit.
Okay, this is administration.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris Trumbauer with the County Executive's Office. We discussed this at the work session, but this resolution.
If we could have it quiet in the back, we still have council business. If you could have conversations outside the chamber, please. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Trumbauer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This resolution is required by state law. Every 2 years, we have to submit essentially proof that we are meeting our clean water obligations under our municipal stormwater permit. So I have with me at the table Eric Michelson from DPW and Kelly Kenny from Office of Law that can answer any specifics. But you'll see there's a 20-page exhibit that explains all of the whereas and data there. I will note that and thank the auditor's office for working with administration staff to dot all the I's and cross all the T's and make sure the numbers are right, and we will be offering an amendment to ground truth that at the appropriate time. But if Mr. Michelson wants to add any comments to help explain what this ginormous resolution does.
I don't have anything to add other than just to point out a couple key points. In terms of the funding, both in the past and projected, this program basically assumes no increases in the stormwater fee over the time frame, as well as some small increase in the number of billable units as a result of development activity. Overall, again, the executive summary really captures all this, but we've got more than sufficient funding to be able to carry out the work that we're proposing to do, and the work that we're proposing to do has a bit of a buffer built into it to ensure that we satisfy our overall stormwater permit goals. So,
great. Councilman Volke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Michelson, thank you for being here. You actually just brought up the point I wanted to ask you about, this buffer. From my review of the report, it looked like there's about $80 million, give or take, in excess of what we are projected to spend versus the revenue that we expect to get from the current stormwater fee. Is that right?
No, I think if you look at the total program activity costs are about $449 million, and the revenue is $502 million.
Okay, so it's about $53 million extra.
It's a blend. Again, the way that this report is put together is a blend of operational costs as well as bond-related costs for capital implementation. And some of the expenses are actually taken on by outside entities in terms of the work that's in here. So the work that's being done here is sort of accumulated restoration work that's going across the county that we can take credit for.
Okay, is there an expectation that there will be leftover money once we have hit that 20% goal of remediation?
That's a possibility. I think one of the things that we're also looking at is that beyond the time frame of this financial assurance plan is that our next MS4 permit from MDE will have additional restoration requirements built into it.
Okay.
And so we don't know what that looks like right now, but there's an expectation that there will be additional work that will have to be done. And so if we've got more than enough here, essentially what that could happen, that will be just rolled over into the next permit.
Assuming that there is no additional remediation requirement, which is probably a foolish assumption, but I'm just curious, what's the plan for the excess money at that point? Where would it go?
Well, the way the watershed protection program exists is a special revenue fund, so that any money that's unspent stays within the fund. It's not something that can be used, for general fund purposes or that sort of thing. So I guess there would be a conversation with the administration and with the budget office about, where we stand at the completion of that full swath of work.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Councilwoman here.
How are these specific projects that you have listed out here that are, some are complete, some are proposed, some are planned, how are those chosen?
That's a great question. So in terms of the Watershed Protection and Restoration Program, we've spent the past decade and a half basically doing watershed assessments throughout the county. We completed the final of those last July, the southern part of the county. And as a result of those watershed assessments where we have consultants and county staff walking essentially every stream mile in the county, we've identified through various formulas areas that are high priorities for restoration where we get a good bang for our buck in terms of restoration work being accomplished to achieve pollution reduction. And the capital program was built on those watershed assessments, essentially identifying where there were good opportunities for restoration and focusing our work there.
And when you say we, you?
Public Works.
Public Works,
Yes.
okay. Is that list ever changed or updated, or is it just sort of this was the last assessment you had and that's it for the next 5, 6, 7 years?
So the way our current list of projects exists is actually there's and I'll be happy to send the council this, but we've got an online GIS map of essentially where our projects completed and in design are, and the way we are currently set up is with a little bit of variation. Most of the work that we're planning on doing with our existing funding authorization is actually already in design. So we aren't in a position where we're taking on a number of new projects. We're basically trying to ensure that we've got sufficient funding to construct the projects that we've already got in design before we begin to take on a lot of additional design work.
Okay. My last question is, it looks to me like you're projecting an increase in general fund needs a couple of years out, except that if you've got this excess in the stormwater, revenue stream, I'm curious why it is that you're asking for additional money from the general fund.
So the way the rate model has been set up is essentially that it's largely funded through the Watershed Protection Fund. Under the previous administration, they had started doing some additional general fund supplementation to ensure that there was not a need for a stormwater fee rate increase. And so we've been working with the budget office to refine that essentially on a year-to-year basis as debt service numbers come in and bond authorization requests come in to refine those. So really we've been working with and relying on the budget office to ensure that those numbers are accurate and sufficient to fund the capital work that we really need to as part of this restoration program.
But if you're projecting the revenue stream for the next number of years, and you've accounted for the fact that there would be no increase, and you're still projecting so much of an excess, doesn't it make sense to utilize that revenue stream that you have there before asking for money from the general fund?
Again, I think that's probably a question for the budget office. This is a little bit of mixing apples and oranges in terms of, again, taking the operating expenditures for the program and mixing that with the capital expenditures that are bonding dependent. And really, in terms of what MDE is concerned about, is our ability to fund the capital program. There are a number of operating expenditures that are stormwater related, but that aren't necessarily counting towards our MS4 compliance that are also funded out of that program. And so I think to dig into it a little bit more would have to happen in order to answer that question.
Okay. I think this is maybe what the amendment goes to, but it looks like maybe there were some calculation errors in some of the initial attachment that we got.
Again, it was an updating of the rate model, essentially based on some bond authorization or lack of bond authorization that had occurred in the last fiscal year. And so as that rate model was updated, some of those numbers changed.
Okay.
Any other questions? Mr. Michelson, again, just understanding being through different budget processes, you also, it's hard to project out labor and capital costs as those change, particularly, with our economy and everything else. So that's why also with some of the cushion for the funds, am I correct in stating that's why, some of these projections as we go forward may change, they may go up, they may go down. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. For, some of the work, again, we're talking about construction that's going to happen 3 or 4 years out, and there are, like you say, a number of factors that can change. Certainly, I don't think we want to present a financial assurance plan that shows us sort of just, barely meeting what our needs are. I think we want to be in a position where we've got some flexibility as project costs inevitably escalate and that sort of thing, and we're in a position to be able to get that work done.
Great. Councilman Fiedler?
The current, or the projects that are noted as completed, are they operating at the best capacity possible, or do we have issues and we're going back and fixing?
I would say, generally speaking, they're operating well. It's not to say that there aren't times we have to go back and repair projects after storm events or that sort of thing. So we have done that, and we will continue to do that. We're required to inspect our practices every 3 years, if not more frequently. And so as issues arise, usually after large storm events, if we have to do corrections, we'll do that as well.
And future projects, are we basing that off of current precipitation models or projected? Water has been a big issue in my district, and I know in other districts. I'm just trying to identify or confirm that what we are working on currently and in the future is adequate enough for what we're receiving from Mother Nature.
Yeah, it's, again, good question. In terms of water quality treatment, usually what MDE is looking for is essentially a one-year storm, a couple of inches, 2 to 3 inches of treatment, which is not probably what's causing problems for your constituents. And in fact, there's not really a lot of incentive for large-scale flood control practices within the sort of water quality framework. But what we are doing is making sure that our projects are designed to be able to withstand or convey those larger storm events up to the 100-year storm event, so that they don't fall apart during those large storms, even if they're not functioning at maximum capacity during those kinds of events. So we are designing our projects to be able to withstand those larger storm events. Generally speaking, what we're trying to do is dissipate energy with these systems. So I would say we're using still current NOAA models in terms of rainfall, but also recognizing, like you say, we're getting a lot of these high intensity, short duration storms.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, seeing no more questions of the council, we'll open this up for public hearing. Resolution 319. Is there anyone who'd like to come forward to speak on Resolution 319? Okay, seeing no movement in the audience, the public hearing on Resolution 319 is now closed. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Resolution number 319.
Resolution number 319, resolution approving Anne Arundel County's 2019 Financial Assurance Plan for compliance with the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Phase 1 Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System Permit.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I don't see any further discussion, but we do have an amendment. Madam Secretary, please read amendment number 1.
Amendment number 1, this amendment substitutes an updated version of the financial assurance plan prepared by the Department of Public Works.
Is there a motion to adopt? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Madam Secretary, is there any further discussion?
Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, but the administration response. Go ahead.
Thank you. Chris Trumbauer for the County Exec's Office. So the original Exhibit A was pretty good, I'll be honest with you. The new Exhibit A is way better. So I would urge you to adopt the amendment.
Great. Any questions on the amendment? Okay, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on amendment number 1.
Ms. Hare?
With that statement, how could I vote any other way but aye?
Ms. Lacy?
Aye.
Ms. Pickard?
Aye.
Mr. Volkey?
Nay.
Ms. Fiedler?
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian?
Aye.
Mr. Pruski?
Aye.
6 in the affirmative, 1 in the negative. Amendment number 1 is adopted.
Okay, Madam Secretary, can you please call the roll? We are going to vote on this, on resolution number 319 as amended.
Ms. Hare?
Aye.
Ms. Lacy?
Aye.
Ms. Pickard?
Aye.
Mr. Volkey?
Nay.
Ms. Fiedler?
Nay.
Ms. Rodvian?
Aye.
Mr. Pruski?
Aye.
5 in the affirmative, 2 in the negative. Resolution number 319 as amended is adopted.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Please read the title of resolution number 519.
Resolution number 519, resolution nominating a member for reappointment to the Anne Arundel County Ethics Commission.
See that Councilwoman Lacy and the administration. I don't know if anybody wanted to chime in on this. Mr. Barron?
Pete Byrne, Office of the County Executive. This appointment is the council's appointment, so the ball is in your court.
Here. Councilwoman Lacy, did you want to speak to this? Or any?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I spoke to Ms. Carter. I interviewed her before, or in the process of bringing this resolution, and found her to be extremely well qualified, a person who, as far as I could tell, is of good judgment, highly recommended by the chair of the Ethics Commission, and I'm pleased to introduce this resolution and support her.
Great. Ms. Hare, Councilwoman Hare? No? Okay. Seeing there's no discussion, we'll open the public hearing on Resolution 519. Anyone like to speak? Seeing no movement in the audience, Resolution number 519, public hearing is now closed. Madam Secretary, please read the title of Resolution 519.
Resolution 519, resolution nominating a member for reappointment to the Anne Arundel County Ethics Commission.
Councilman Volkey?
Oh, no, I was just getting ready. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right, seeing there's no further discussion, Madam Secretary, please call the roll on Resolution number 519.
Ms. Hare?
Aye.
Ms. Lacy?
Aye.
Ms. Pickard?
Aye.
Mr. Volkey?
Aye.
Ms. Fiedler?
Aye.
Ms. Rodvian?
Aye.
Mr. Pruski?
Aye.
7 in the affirmative, none in the negative. Resolution number 519 is adopted.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Is there any other business to be brought before the County Council this evening? May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, the motion carries. County Council is now adjourned till March 4th, 2019. Thank you and have a good evening.